Hello, everybody. Hey, welcome to the Star Wars Celebration fan stage. I am the host of the fan stage, Dan Zare. It's great to see an incredibly packed house. This is seriously the biggest crowd yet. So congratulations. It's been a very popular panel. So this is Padme's Closet, cosplaying Star Wars royalty.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Welcome. Hi. Thank you so much. This is Padme's Closet, cosplay Star Wars royalty, and I see a lot of you out there already have dabbled in it. Thanks for coming. We're going to do some short introductions before we go into our individual projects and talk about what we worked on.
So hi, I'm Kelly. I go by Cosplay. I'm from Pennsylvania. I've been cosplaying for 15 years. Favorite characters, Amidala, Lunar.Lyn, Leia. I am a Revolution member with my Queen Amidala. And I've competed competitively with it, so I have won a Best in Show with my kimono gown. And I also represented the Revolution at the Rise of Skywalker premiere in my Queen Amidala.
Hi everyone, my name is Momomxoficial. I'm from Mexico. My favorite characters are, of course, Amidala and Anakin Skywalker. I'm a proof member of the Revolution. I love Mexican culture. My favorite holiday is Dia de los Muertos, and I'm really so happy that I found a way to mix my favorite day, my Mexican culture, like Dia de los Muertos, with the Star Wars. They are my two biggest loves in my life, so it's the best. Sorry, sometimes I confuse the words. And I'm relatively new with the cosplay. I have been doing cosplaying about 2 years. And I'm studying to be a seamstress and a makeup artist. And well, even if my career is short, I won the first place in the Ultimate Cosplay Championship 2021 in the beginners category. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lynn. I'm from Arizona, so kind of close to here. I've been cosplaying for about 11 years, and actually my original Queen Amidala that my mom and I made in 1999 was one of the first things I ever wore to a convention. And I mean, by my standards now, it's like, oof, but it was such a good time. That is exactly what hooked me with costuming at events and meeting other people that also like to do the same thing. My favorite characters are, of course, Padme, and I love Ahsoka, and Kylo Ren's my guy, so. I'm also a competitive and craftsmanship cosplayer. I love the challenge, the technical aspect, getting to learn new techniques. It keeps me busy, keeps me grounded, so I have my day job that fuels my hobbies. I have a bachelor's degree in oil painting that I don't really use for my job, but I do use it in my hobby now, so. Let's see, oh yeah, and I have won Best in Show awards, but not yet with a Star Wars costume, maybe someday.
So I'm going to start off, and I'm going to kind of talk about two of the gowns that I did, starting with the kimono gown, and then I'm also going to talk about her packing gown from episode 2. Got a fan out there, I like it. So as far as my process for building these costumes, the main part of researching my friends' gathering is like a big thing when it comes to cosplaying art. So Panelist Guide is like my go-to. If you don't know what Panelist Guide is, Google it on your phone. It's an amazing website. It has exhibit photos. It has tons and tons of references right at your fingertips for her. The Dressing the Galaxy book, for anybody that's unfamiliar with that, has some really great reference in it. I have photos from the costume exhibitions too when they were traveling around, so hopefully they start doing that again. And if you have the opportunity to go check those out, you can get photos in real life. Look at the behind the scenes videos, and even the Revolution forums can be a really great place where girls offer advice on, constructing these garments. So First thing I had to do was gather the materials. Fabrics that I used on this gown included silk chiffon, silk taffeta, silk dupioni, and then the diamond fabric that I got for the OB was a upholstery fabric that I found online after a long time digging to find it. This gown takes embroidery thread and lots of beads, and you have to get some of the materials to build the wig structure. I used wire, felt, and then the wig fibers, and then boning and any other undergarment necessities is what I used. So I'm going to start off with the undergarment for this gown. I built a corset, and then I also have an A-line petticoat underneath of it to help maintain the shape of the kimono so it doesn't really sink in too much, especially considering it's like 3 layers of a lot of fabric. The base layer of this gown is made entirely of silk chiffon. I think it took a total of 16 yards. There's 8 yards of maroon and 8 yards of blue because in the original gown it's an iridescent chiffon, and I couldn't find the right colorway anywhere. I looked and looked. So what I did is I layered the 2 colors on top of each other to kind of create a little bit of that iridescence as they are sheer fabrics. The gown is fully front seamed, and then the technique that's underneath after studying the photos, I determined that was pin tucks. For anybody that's unfamiliar with pin tucks, is just tuck the fabric very thinly and stitch up it. So the entire gown is stitched all the way up in pin tucks because I was making it for a competition and I'm ridiculous. Yeah, this layer. So the middle layer is actually a very, very time-consuming layer. There's a specific technique that was used to create the middle layer involving some kind of chemicals. I don't know how it was done with the fabrics. So I kind of had to make it myself. So I used silk dupioni and silk chiffon. And to create that bubbly like texture that it has, the silk chiffon is cut in much larger pieces than the actual pattern pieces for the dupioni. And then I hand stitched it down with invisible thread all over the entire layer. Oh, it's pretty scary. There's also beads on the sleeves of the gown, and I actually made it go all the way up the sleeves because I'm ridiculous. And even though you see just about this much. And what I did was I used the same pearls that I used on the outer layer, and I also, the pattern I used was the same exact swirls that you see on the outside of the gown, just beads, and then that's covered by the chiffon. And it is a fully lined layer because I'm competing. So the outer layer I do have here with me, this is a pretty time-consuming layer. It's made from an iridescent silk taffeta. I'm going to stand up and show it real quick. And it's lined with like this light purple polyester lining. Let's see, embroidery pattern is done with this gold embroidery thread. I just got it at Joann's. You can get it anywhere. You can get kind of like the embroidery thread, and it's a split stitch to create the embroidery. One key thing I like to know about this costume is when you look at the details, the embroidery doesn't go into the seam. So when I built this, I actually embroidered the front and the back, then I sewed them together, and then I had to go back and embroider over the seam. So that way it's a continuous embroidery around the gown instead of it being, within the seam. And then lots of Swarovski pearls all over the embroidery. And then the sleeves are filled with actually cellophane, so. And I discovered using that because when I found one of the behind the scenes videos, the costume designer was talking about it and she touched the sleeves and I heard the crinkle and I was like, cellophane, that's what I'm gonna stuff it with. So it's super lightweight and it fills it up, which is really, really nice. And then the belt on the OB is made with upholstery fabric and there is boning sewn in for support to make sure it stays vertical because without that support, it's gonna crumple in on itself. So the headdress, obviously the biggest part of every Queen Amidala build is the headdress. So I work as a 3D artist, so I was able to use those skills to actually sculpt the model in 3D. I used an exact reference photo of her, so that way I could get the proportions just right in my 3D program. And then the texture is actually added with some mesh fabric that's glued on top of the 3D print. Because if I tried to print that, it would kind of get lost in the sanding process. So by adding that on layer, you don't lose that kind of like texture that it has. The hair fan was built with felt and a wire frame, and then covered in just some, oh my gosh, wig fibers. And then everything just inserted and is glued into place right into the pieces for the headdress. And all of the beading, for the main part of it, is a piece of silk organza, and then I did the beading. It was just literally just threading on a certain number of beads and stitching it until you got the look that I wanted. And I kind of free-handed a lot of it, but it was a lot of work, and there's over 40,000 beads in this headdress. Because it's all seed beads, so it's a lot. And then the strands are all just very long strands, and I do use proper beading thread so that it has the strength. Because if you use any kind of like thread for sewing, these are all going to break and you're just going to have beads everywhere. You've got to make sure you get thread meant for beading, otherwise it'll fall apart on you. And then it's sewn to the wig with invisible thread to hold it into place. And then the wig has a ponytail clip. And then there's actually a clip on the back of this wig that you never see in the movie at all, but there's a little clip that has more beads dangling down. So that's one of the other little details. There, I know, it's because you never see it. So that was kind of the process of how I constructed my kimono gown. Now for the packing gown, this one's a little bit easier than the kimono gown. One of her easier episode 2 dresses, I feel like. Again, I pull a lot of my research from the same places. The materials include fabrics like velvet, chiffon or charmeuse for the sleeves. I used charmeuse, but I think the original gown is chiffon. The only thing is I'm always so worried with chiffon, with pulling, especially with the bands, so that's why I elected to go with the charmeuse instead. And then I use taffeta or dupione for the skirt is pretty good. And then you need organza again for the embroidery thread and beads. I like to get my beads from Fire Mountain Gems online. The wig structure is actually, when I did my original one, it was actually cardboard because I commissioned that wig and then they never delivered it, so I had to construct something very quick. So it was cardboard pieces covered in wig, padded out and covered in wig fibers. And it's actually attached to a headband, but I'll explain a little bit more of that. And then lots of boning and anything needed for your undergarments for this because it needs structure. So I don't have a lot of photos of my gown construction, but I pulled some of the reference photos from Padawan Sky. Particularly, these are when they used this dress in the Rose Bowl parade, so they would, use the gowns for that. But as you can see, there's a structured bodice. Oh my God, Mike, sorry. Structured bodice, and then a petticoat attached to that. And then the velvet bodice goes over top. And that structured bodice underneath, actually the sleeves connect right to it. It's not an entirely separate shirt underneath, it's all connected to the structured bodice, is how it's built. And the sleeves I use elastic thread to gather at the 2 points on the sleeve to kind of create a little bit of poof, and then that section there is where your armbands would go. And then the skirt is a very large, full skirt that's just completely separate that you would just, sew together and zip on. So the embroidery is the most time-consuming part of this. I created it as a separate panel on silk organza. I used a template, transferred it onto the organza. Again, it's a split stitch to fill in all the areas. Beads are stitched on top, and then the border is a bundle of embroidery thread that has been stitched around. Then you sew it to the bodice. I do have a digital template of this exact embroidery panel in my shop that is available, and if anybody wants to get a card afterwards, I'll let you know. You can go get it. So if you need help with the digital template I've made, and it took about 60 hours just to do the embroidery. Again, I did 3D printing for the accessories. The armbands, I used elastic where the latch would be on the original to hold them on. And the headdress has a hair clip, that's how it holds the front piece on, and the sides are just held up with some bobby pins. And the wig buns, again, I had to kind of last minute do it, but they're cardboard covered with some like foam padding and then wig hairs over top of it. And it's actually on a headband that goes underneath of the hair, so you can lift the hair up. The headband would slide right on. That you can cover it with the rest of the hair and pull it up in the bun in the back that she has. Okay. Just a packing count. Sorry. Trying to walk
Okay, I will tell you more like a general idea what I do to make my costumes. So like I divide like into parts. The first part is research. I'm trying to sketch, to have in my mind all the possible details I can find on the photos. Also my search of reference. Could you? Thank you. My friend told you, like you can find it in Revolution CRL, in the Padawan's Guide, in the Queen Amidala collectible dolls, the movie itself. I find really helpful also the Facebook groups. You can find amazing Facebook groups where you can find lovely ladies who will always happy to help you if you have some doubts about how to do some things. So I will pass really fast about this research because I know I see a lot of Padmes and Queen Amidalas here, and I know a lot of us know how to find this amazing information. So the second part of my process is, of course, the creative process. My creative process I divide in two parts. The first one is like getting off the materials. Talking about fabrics, I help me in the popular fabric stores or specialized fabric stores. I don't buy online, but it's not because I don't want it, but at this point in Mexico we don't have yet the culture to order for internet like small pieces of fabric to know the texture and all these kind of things. So at this point I need to go to the stores to try to touch it and see how the fabric feels. So sometimes it's really difficult. I need to go to really to specialized fabric stores because, you know, Queen Amidala has the most rare but beautiful fabrics, so sometimes it's really difficult to find them. Talking about the accessories, well, I search them in the haberdashery, in different website stores, Thames, internet, in Amazon, Etsy store, even AliExpress. I help me to find the most unique accessories, especially talking about beads, because yeah, Queen Amidala's costume also has the most beautiful but rare beads, stationery, and of course I try to find the accessories on the internet, you know, like Warbla, because also in Mexico we don't have a place to get the Warbla, so at this point I need to order it from the outside, from another country, this kind of material. The second part of my process is like making the gown. And in this part, I really prefer to do first all the details, like beading, making textures, embroidery, painting the fabric, dyeing, etc., printing the fabric before to start like get together the puzzle. And to this, I really find so helpful YouTube and ladies, amazing ladies like these two beautiful ladies you see, like they are always able to share with you how to do some things, because in my case sometimes I don't know how to do it, and they are so beautiful that you can ask them, could you help me, how do you do this, could you give me some advice, and they always are so able to tell you, yes, of course, I can tell you. So I love that of this amazing Queen / Padme Amidala community. Girls, all of you are amazing, and thank you so much for that. After that, of course, is the time to put the puzzle together, to make the pattern, to sew the things, and of course, at the final details, like In the kimono, some details you need to do it enhance you, and sometimes this is the most consuming part, but this is the part like you really need to do because at the end your gown will look so amazing and incredible. And during all this process, I try the gown like hundreds of times. My husband, I know he hates me because of the time I go to him and tell him, please, I need you help me to put again the dress. And he was like, oh my God, again? Again? It looks like the same. And I was, no. So thank you so much. And then the last part of my creative process is to make the headdress. For me, sometimes they are the more complicated to do, and this is the part where I really experiment a lot. And of course, I waste a lot of materials, but it's so worth it. At the end, I really have fun to do this kind of experiments because I learn new things, and for me, that's also a really good thing. Being in the cosplay world has given me to the ability to learn new things. And finally, I will talk a little bit really faster about some of the details of some of my gowns. Example, in this gown I'm wearing the travel to Naboo. I use the embossing technique in the velvet. Like you use like the fabric, water, and stamp to create the Naboo symbols. Of course, the beading, and in this case, I spent two months beading only the ribbons. I know it's a lot of time, but at the end, like I said, it's worth it. In the Coruscant gown, I also bead a lot. I need to learn how to construct a wig. So yeah, it's a lot of things, a lot of techniques you need to learn, but believe me, I enjoy it a lot, and I'm so sure a lot of you enjoy it a lot too. And well, you can at the end you can find the final result. Of course, I know all of you who are a cosplayer and understand me. You never seen like your gown finished because always have seen things you can improve. But at the end, I think all this work really worth it. So thank you so much. Really, thank you so much.
I'm going to be talking about one that I was supposed to have finished for this convention, and it's not. So, if any of you have been following me, I don't know if anyone knows who I am, but I've been working on this since 2018. Not consistently, but especially over 2020, but off and on. It is very complicated. And so with this one, and I'm also going to be talking about this one, which is I made in 2015, I'm going to be talking about the contrast between that you don't have to have the best things to make Queen Amidala. You don't have to have every detail. You can still make something that's fun to wear and looks really good, and you don't have to, you know, break a bank or know every single technique to be able to accomplish it. But I am going to talk about this one first. It's fresh in my mind. This is her famous, infamous red throne room gown or invasion gown. Where do I even begin on this thing? So I gathered every image I could possibly find. I was lucky enough to purchase this book off of a friend that I don't think she realized what it was worth. But I have this. It has seen better days, but it has a few really good images of this gown in there. And it talks a little bit about some of the fabrics. And some of the things I run into are that when they talk about fabric, it's for people assuming they kind of don't really understand it. So they'll just say, it's silk. Okay, but what kind of silk? So I had to delve in a little deeper. And a lot of people on the Rebel Legion forums, they know this stuff. I am not a member of Rebel Legion, but I appreciate all of the hard work that goes into all of those costumes. So after a ton of research, like hours, at one point I was keeping track of it, but I gave up. I discovered that the main body of the dress is made of a silk bengaline, which has like little micro ribbing, kind of like corduroy. And you can tell the real one is silk. It has this beautiful sheen. I opted for polyester because, first of all, I couldn't find it, and second of all, cost. At some point, you gotta weigh what's your goal with this? Can you accomplish kind of the same thing without getting something like silk? So that was my choice. There's bridal satins. I used a cotton denim for some of the understructure, I'll show you. There's some knit. The tight sleeves around her arms are a knit because I wanted to be able to have movement in my arms and such. I used a lot of thermoplastics, metallic gold embroidery thread, which is a pain to use, as I found out. There's EVA foam, there's pink insulation foam. I sculpted things out of polymer clay, like Sculpey, and I used different silicone casting materials to make molds, and then I would use like quick setting plastic to replicate pieces. Basically, I wanted to make things as lightweight as possible, and if you use your raw Sculpey molds, it's not going to do that. So let's dive in. So as I said, I started in 2018, and the first thing I did was math. And my husband helped me because he's better at math than I am. But there's a lot of pi, there's a lot of trigonometry. And this is just my approach. My goal with this was to replicate it as closely as I possibly could. And that included the silhouette. And Natalie's a little bit shorter than me, so I went into Illustrator and I sized her image to my height, and then I took my measurements in Illustrator from that image. And it included the height and width of every panel and section. You can kind of see in those sketches. And from that, I took how big the lanterns were, how tall and wide things were, in relation to each other, and things like that. So with that, I was able to somehow make a pattern for this hoop skirt understructure, which I felt like I really needed in order to get that. It's a bell shape, but it's a really weird bell shape. And I decided to make a small little waist cincher corset thing just to simply hold the weight of the hoop skirt and eventually the dress and lanterns off of my hips and midsection, because after a while that's gonna hurt. Man. This dress, I think for the dress I only did 3 mock-ups itself, but for the sleeve, how many was it? 13? I don't know what it was horrible. Something about this, I have to admit, it about killed me. Something about the shape of it is, it's like a cone, it's like a snow cone. But it's sliced at the, like if you look at the side, it's like a straight line. It's the weirdest shape. And you have piping. All of this has piping. You have to do math for every single panel. There are 24 panels on the dress and 12 panels per sleeve. And so it's just a lot of math involved. But without doing this, you'd be in big trouble because you spent all this money on all your expensive materials, and you can't just go in and start cutting. You have to get your patterns made first, basically. So this is my chaotic process. I often use a material in the US. It's made by Palon, and it's called Easy Pattern, and it's a fabricy fibrous paper that I use to transfer patterns or draft my own patterns, but it also can be sort of draped. You can kind of see in some of the sleeve patterns, the sleeves that look more white are that Easy Pattern paper. And I went through a shameful amount of that. I think our local craft store was like, back for more. But yeah, that's my process for that. One of the very first things I did in 2019 was all of the gold embroidery down the front. I did not do the files for this. I bought them from somebody, but I noticed on the original that it's actually more of an applique. It wasn't embroidered straight into the tabards on the front of her collar. So I decided to be crazy, and I embroidered embroidered them onto like a taffeta material, and then I cut them out, and then it was a mix between like what is it called? I stitched it closed and I used fray check, so it was like a blend of the two. And then I actually ended up attaching it to the tabard with like an iron-on substance, if that makes any sense. It was just the metallic threads are so hard to stitch through, I couldn't really hand stitch it on, so that was what I opted for. And I really enjoy the way it kind of pops off of the surface because it has that applique look. And at one point, I wish I could zoom in. On the bottom row, the second from the right, you can see the whole front of it. There's a part of the embroidery that kind of goes a little bit over the border onto the fur, and I really wanted to capture that, and I couldn't have done that if I had sewn it straight into the red fabric. Also, the top collar itself has, I don't actually know how to pronounce it, it's vermicelli or vermicelli, but it's a squiggly pattern that you can do very organically. It's like, I just kind of hand drew it, eyeballed it, and then I hand stitched silk cording along those lines to replicate her design on the top. That alone took me like a month. That was a long time ago. Thank goodness it's done, so I can move on with my life. Also, on the bottom row on the far left is, you can see kind of where I was attaching, I had to make my own piping because I wanted to get a certain width, and I actually did make it too wide at first, and I made like 100 yards of it, and then I remade them because it was too big. Double check your measurements, triple check your measurements. So anyway, I'm gonna donate that somewhere. But each panel, I had to put on piping. And the thing with this dress, you'll notice on Natalie especially, it scoops very tight up against her body, but you don't see any like curve of her body or anything. It's very tube-like. The tricky part with that is, aside from all the math, if you have to line up your seams to sew almost perfectly, because even an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/16 of an inch, and you do that all the way around, something's gonna get off, and it's not gonna look the way you want it. Does that make sense? Like, it adds up. All of a sudden, you have like 1/2 inch of space that you didn't need before. So you have to be really precise. It's a nightmare. Oh yeah, on the bottom right is the side view of my finished sleeve, and that was one of the last things I finished before I decided to not rush it for this convention, but I'm really proud of how it lays. Another thing about that sleeve, who else sews in here? Okay, so you know how sleeves, okay, hold on. You know how a sleeve, where the seam goes in here, if you draw a straight line down, that's, kind of where the bottom of your sleeve is. Where her curve is on the front, like the highest point on her sleeve, goes into the side. And then the middle, where it angles down, not the longest part, the middle is what meets up with your shoulder side seam. I had to reorient how I knew how sleeve. I'm not a hobbyist, so I'm not a pattern maker. I had to kind of make that up. I had to figure out how to pattern that. Does that make sense? Yeah, it was awful, but I think I got it. So we'll find out when I get home. So, holy moly. I knew this was gonna be a challenge, but it's every little piece of this is what's hard. She has her croissant. I call it the croissant. She has her hair roll. My main goal was to make this as lightweight as possible, right? Check my time. So I opted, in the past, you'll see in this one I used a different material, I decided to do pink insulation foam, which you can glue together layers of it with plain old Gorilla Glue. So many glues will eat your foam. If you're unsure, test. Take a piece of foam, label it, try different glues, but regular good old Gorilla Glue works, but it foams up, so you have to smash it flat, all your layers flat, and you let it cure for 24 hours. But it's carvable, it's sandable, so I was able to, I didn't put a picture of it. It was ridiculous. It was like 6 layers of 1-inch pink insulation foam, and then I drew a 2D croissant shape, and then I carved it with a knife, and then I dremeled, and I dremeled, and I dremeled, and I dremeled. Around the front part, it dips in where her little weird egg things are. So I did dremel, and I did dremel, and I was starting to get mad, because it was just not enough. But you want to do it that way because you can always take it away, but you can't put it back. So you just gotta take your time doing that. I finally think I got it. And unpictured here, I actually sealed it with, it's like a Mod Podge, it's called Flex Bond. It's like Elmer's glue, it's about the same thing. I sealed it, and then I went ahead and decided to do Plastidip, just to kind of make sure the foam was away from anything I might be using to use to wrap the wig wefting around when I get to that. So the entire, I have the whole headpiece or headdress already patterned and everything. I am making it out of a blend of EVA foam, Warbler, Fibra, jump rings. I haven't yet decided if I'm going to, I am replicating the designs in her actual headdress, but I can't decide yet if I'm gonna do it in a stamp or in a relief, mostly for ease. Now that I have more time, probably the hard way. It's one of those things that I've come this far, I might as well just go all the way. So, the little ornament that's on top of her headdress, I bought the Cinnabar bead because it's a specific bead that you can find at various stores online. I think it originates from China, but I'm not sure where the design comes from. I mean, this gown is influenced by Imperial Chinese design. So, all of the gold pieces I hand sculpted with Sculpey, and then I personally decided to make silicone molds of those, and then used like what's it called? Smoothcast 300 from Reynolds Advanced Materials, and they're just lighter weight. It is kind of challenging getting those casts without air bubbles. I might be redoing it, but I used like a fine gold powder to line my silicone mold, and then I would put black casting material in there because something with the black and the gold, it really pops. So that's what I decided to do. You can see the Jewel of Zenda setting is with that technique. I wish I could zoom in. And then the lanterns. I've seen these done many ways by different people. My 1999 Amidala, we bought big old Easter eggs and just painted the inside, and then I used like plastic ties to like tie them to the, you know, like price tag things. I like stapled it to my my costume. Like my mom was helping me do that a long time ago. I decided I really wanted to vacuum form these, so I did the research. I bought a little vacuum former from a small business online, and I started with a aluminum foil armature because you can't really make a solid polymer clay sculpture. It's too much material and it's really heavy. So I kind of did I got the 2D shape from my Illustrator program. They are 7.5 inches tall, in case you're wondering. So printed the 2D out, made the aluminum foil armature, and then I slowly covered it and smoothed polymer clay over it. And that was I think they call it a busk for vacuum forming. I decided to use PETG plastic that you're supposed to use like an industrial oven to heat this up. I use my kitchen. You just need to make sure it's ventilated because it does give off toxic fumes. So, it's such a weird experience. They give you a frame for your vacuum former and you heat the plastic up, and it takes about 15 minutes. You want to do it slow so you don't create blistering or bubbles, but it'll sink. You have to put it up on some loaf pans or blocks, but you'll see the plastic sink really low, and then you carefully, in fact, you should use like welding gloves because plastic burn, So So you reach in and carefully take it out. You already have your vacuum going through your form, and you just slowly set it down where there's a seal around the top of your vacuum former, and it just sucks the plastic down on top of your busk, and it creates that shape. It was kind of a nightmare. My husband helped me. He took a jigsaw and sawed an oval around the outside, left like a 3/4 inch lip because I'm gonna be using that to attach those eggs to the back of the inside of my gown. I usually stay well away from Velcro, but I think that might be where I go with this because I want to be able to remove them if they ever get damaged or I need to repair the light or whatever. So, this was not my idea. I took this from a friend who also made this gown, but she used like a stained glass stain, and I swirled it around on the inside. That was a nightmare. It's very hard to get even, and it's still too transparent, but it at least it made it look like glass on the inside. But I also went and got some nice orange spray paint, and I just kind of misted the inside so it was a lot more opaque, but still enough to let light shine through. So, and then the front black part is actually just plain old Warbler, which it stuck to the front of it really well after I heated it up, but it looked good enough. I don't think I'm even gonna paint it. I kind of like the color. So, and the texture of one side of the Warbler is kind of rough, and it just looks very similar to how the actual jewels look. So I'm keeping it. So yeah, that's where I'm at with that project, and that's one way you can do it. It's not the only way you can do it. So I'm going to talk about my Sage. I made her in 2015 for Phoenix Comic Con. And this was back, I've only been sewing my own stuff since like 2013. I was still kind of new to the more complicated things, and I wasn't really concerned at the time with being movie accurate. I was more just like, what do I have on hand, or what can I find locally that's inexpensive? So I went with a polyester, it's almost like a one-way stretch taffeta. That's hard, maybe don't do that. And then just like cheap polyester velvet. I did get some burnout velvet. It's like I don't even know what to call this. It's like a knit burnout velvet, which is not what they use at all. This was made from a 2D cardboard shape. It has a wooden dowel in the middle that connects the two. I'll show you in the next slide, but EVA foam, EVA foam, Warbler, and the spray insulation that you have to like cure, and then you can carve it down. And there's a lot of acrylic paint, and my belt's made of real leather, which is, I opted for it because it's really held up through a lot of stuff. So I had to really dive back into find these photos because I didn't really take a lot of photos back in these days, but I remember I bought like a Japanese kimono pattern, and I just heavily modified it. I think I even took something of my own clothing and traced the neckline or something. I really just Mod Podged this together, but I mean, that's how you learn. Tracing your own clothes and then seeing how, I mean, even just trying to sew a pair of pants together can be really confusing if you're new to it, so I recommend tracing a pair of clothing and just learning how to put things together. So you can kind of see how I had like some like green cotton that I just used for a mock-up, and then a piece of the Japanese, it's like a samurai costume or something. It was so long ago. So here's the headdress, and you can see the wooden dowel with the cardboard. I traced it off of Illustrator after I think I just sized Keira Knightley's face to my face or something, and that's how I kind of got it in the realm of, I keep hitting my mic, I'm sorry, proportion. The tricky thing with her headdresses, they seem like they would be ginormous, like really big, but they're actually not. And it kind of tricks your brain a little bit, because as you're making it, you're like, this looks really small, but you put it on and you're like, oh, it's not small. It's easy to make them bigger than you think, so I'm lucky enough to know how to use Illustrator, but I know a lot of people aren't. You can freehand things, just, you know, draw it, try it, draw it, try it. Just do lots of back and forth. It's worth it, I promise. So I would spray the insulation foam and I would carve it down using the cardboard in the middle to be the guide of where I don't want to go too far into the headdress. And you can see that bottom left, that's after I covered the insulation foam with masking tape. And then over the masking tape I actually did paper mache, and then I sanded that down, and it kind of left a really cool texture to leave for the red parts, and I just painted right on top of the paper mache. Actually turned out really cool. And I stained my own belt. I bought a Ruby's Naboo blaster, and I added a wooden dowel to extend it, primed and painted it, easy. And that's it. But that's another way you can do it.
We were gonna go ahead and take questions now. So if anybody has questions, there's a mic right over here. You can come on up to the mic and we'll, you know, answer any questions you have, whether it's about the things that we constructed or any of the other gowns, because a lot of us have studied a lot of her dresses.
I do want to say, there's a lot of you, but I do have some freebie buttons that I made. I have 3 different colors for the Naboo royal emblem, and I have some Rebels and Jedi buttons, so please come get a button. Okay, anyone have questions? Or you can always just ask where you're seated if that's more comfy.
Yeah, that's fine too. Sure.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, for the stained glass paint that you used for the egg things, what brand did you use?
Do you remember how to pronounce it? Yes, I have the brand. I don't know how to pronounce it. Come talk to me after, okay? I'll hook you up. Yes, go ahead.
You said you wanted to use Velcro, although I understand the wanting to be able to remove them, but have you worked with rare earth and neodymium magnets yet?
Yes, quite a bit actually. In fact, I'm using those in my headdress. I'm worried about the weight they might add to, because there's 6 lanterns and I would have to use probably at least 4 each. So it depends if they're too heavy, but that's not a bad.
I think MasterCard sells them as an actual donut shape, so where you can sew them, and they sell them pretty tiny.
Ooh.
Those things are very small, or be very strong.
Are they the strong silver ones or are they the
They're
flat
neodymium,
ones?
so
Yeah,
they're-
that's the other thing. If they might rub against threads and stuff, it just depends. But yeah, no, that's a good idea. Now that I have time.
Go ahead.
How do you kind of motivate yourself? Because one of the things that is the trial and error, trial and error, trial and error, and I definitely have projects that I put in my little like UFO pile because I'm just like, I'm so upset at it. How do you pace yourself in a way that,
The back of the room cannot hear the questions.
Okay.
The questions are out.
Sorry guys, you'll repeat the questions. Okay. She's asking how we stay motivated to do things, to get projects done, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to that? Or? Okay. Sometimes I don't. Most of the time I don't. So having an event helps. It's probably also why I'm a competitor, because having a competition helps. I get motivated to see friends, or sometimes if I have a friend working on the same thing or a similar outfit, that can be motivation, but sometimes I just don't. And you have to talk yourself into it. It's not a really good answer, but it's a really human answer.
I mean, I tend to just, it's a hobby, so I try not to like force myself to do something if I'm not gonna be happy. Like, I mean, I didn't do a whole lot over the past 2 years with like COVID and stuff. Like, I barely made anything. So like, you know, find your happy place and like, but don't force yourself, because then you're gonna be unhappy or you're gonna work on it and then you're gonna, you know, make mistakes and stuff and you're just gonna like, you know, kick it to the curb. But always know that it's okay if you're doing trial and error, that making error is a part of the process.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
For me, well, first of all, I really love her, so that motivates me, but sometimes like we say, you don't find that I need to do this, and I don't know, in some part of the process, I have cried. It's true. I have seen him cry, and oh my God, I don't know why I decided to do this. I hate myself. Why? But at the end, believe me, it's worth it.
Yeah.
So in your mind, have this. It doesn't matter if at this moment I'm crying and I don't know why I decide to do this. At the end, when you see the entire result, you say, oh my God, every little second, all my tears, worth it. Yeah.
Any other questions?
How do you store costumes?
She's asking how we store our costumes.
In a closet. No, I hang mine up in a closet. I have an extra closet in my house. That's where most of them go. Some things go in plastic containers for like really big bulky stuff. And then on the top of my like bookshelf, I have wig kits where I put like a lot of my wigs and stuff. Because I have like a big cube shelf in my craft room. I can just leave them all up there.
I'm looking up to have some space where this, oh my gosh, sorry. This actually sits out on a shelf where I keep highly stylized things. I don't mean to have them on display, but I have them up there to not get smashed or damaged, so stuff like that. I live in Arizona, so I don't store anything outside. It's just too hot. If you have thermoplastics, you're done for. So I keep everything just like folded up nicely in a box. I put hard props and things in cardboard boxes with acid-free tissue paper. With vinyls, you want to wrap that and keep that away from anything else because vinyls will leach colors and dyes from other things and they'll ruin your vinyl. And vinyl already has a short life, so just consider things like that.
I used to use my closet, but oh my God, these Amidala costumes are really, really heavier. That the tube of my closet start to and I was like, oh my God. So I decided to put them in plastic boxes at this point. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hey, trying out the mic. So it seems like there's a lot of different skills in constructing each costume, and that as you go along in cosplay, you add a lot of new skills. I'm wondering what new skills of Amidala costumes in particular you've learned and were your favorites.
Ooh.
Sorry, repeat that again.
I'm curious, like, what skills that you've learned in Amidala costuming do you value the most, or what was an unexpected skill that you learned that you found?
Learning beading and embroidery, because it's like on everything that she wears in episode 1, so it's like really vital. So learning how to do all the embroidery and like learning how to do all the beading. But I literally just like experimented with this one. Like it's literally just like strands with like 4 or 5 beads or like some longer strands, and it's all stitched down with the beading thread. But learning how to do all that was like really the biggest thing because it's such an important part of all of her costumes. But I also really like it because it's very relaxing. I can just sit there and stitch.
For me, I know it's too simple, but sewing. I mean, I found my passion. I studied visual arts at the beginning, like my degree, but I feel like I was not too good enough in that place. But then I discovered sewing, and I really feel like this is mine. I love it. So it's so basic, but it's a real skill. I'm so happy to discover.
Something that surprised me because I always thought, well, I just said I don't know how to do all the other stuff. When I had to, I just did it, and I was really shocked that I was able to. I mean, math. 7 years ago, I did this, and I'm still shocked that I was able to figure that out and do that. So I think that was valuable for me because before then I had only worked with sewing and fabrics and things, but I thought, well, that kind of opens a whole new realm of possibilities now that I know how to create something solid and structured. And yeah, it was miserable, but I know some people really love making props and working with foams and chemicals, but it's intimidating for me. So that was a valuable skill, and now I'm taking it into my next project. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. Go ahead.
So, obviously I'm not a seamstress or anything, but I want to hire you for my next Halloween costume. But my question is, I'm always curious, like, in people's hobbies and things, what are your professions? What is your, just, if you don't mind me asking.
Oh, not at all. I'm an accountant. I'm not a CPA, but I work for my family's small business and I help with their bookkeeping, and so it's
You gotta use
just
your creative skills because you're.
well, I'm an elder millennial, so I graduated during a really bad time and couldn't find a job with my degree. So I am happy where I'm at, and I come to things like this to bring my life joy and to make community and to have a hobby that grounds me. And you do not have to make money in this to enjoy it. It can just be a hobby. So
I work in video games. I'm a character artist for video games, so I work creatively and that's why I can do all the 3D stuff.
her incredible 3D.
That's what I do for a living.
Well, can I say I am a student? Okay, I used to be a graphic designer and illustrator, but then, the pandemic happens. I used to have a small business, but my business need to close, So at this point, I'm a housewife, and I'm studying. I'm studying to be a professional seamstress and to be a makeup artist, and I really want to be working in this area. Like, my dream is to work, I don't know, in the opera, on the theater, or the ballet. Yeah, I want to make costumes for them.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing.
I saw your name come a couple times, so thank you next.
Oh, go.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
I don't care, you go.
Go ahead.
What were your first major cosplay costumes that you made, and what inspired you to do that?
So if you asked what our first major costume
You really want to know?
Oh my god, okay. So, my first major build was 15 years, so 14 years ago. I did Fran for Final Fantasy 12, and it was the first time I ever worked with foam or anything like that, and I actually got second place at Otakon with that, so that was my second year cosplaying. Yeah, so that was my first big build and kind of what spurred my competition spirit.
Oh, well, this is the costume this is my first costume made 100% by myself, and I'm so proud, and I'm beyond that. I can't believe it yet, because I can't believe I won a first place with this, and believe me, I cry a lot, but like I said, worth it.
So, I actually started out my con adventures with anime conventions. So my first completely made on my own costume was Lucy Hartfilia from Thank you, Fairy Tale. I love Fairy Tale. And it was just like a simple pleated skirt and collar. Well, the collar was actually really hard for me, but collared shirt, and I was so proud, and it's still holding up, and that was 10 years ago. So.
I think we have time for one more question then as well.
All right.
Last one.
Okay, this is related to the staying inspired question. I've done my fair share of cosplay, and I've done my fair share of major failures that set me back days. I was just wondering, what could you share? You kind of already shared that you had them. What were your major failures where you're at your breaking points?
Like right before I came here. It's true.
I've been there.
Who wants to go?
I don't think that I've ever necessarily had a major failure that set me back days on end with anything. With my last competition costume, I did remake some of the armor. That was a personal choice. It's after the first iteration, I was like, I'd rather remake it, make it look better. So I did that personally, but I don't think I've ever had, not that I can recall off the top of my head, something I would consider a major failure that set me back so much.
For me, I don't want to think about oh, this is a major failure, because at the end, you discover that things happen for some reason, and maybe you think, oh no, this is the way, and it needs to be, but at the end you discover it wasn't the way, and you find the correct way. So maybe you, at this moment, you were not prepared for that. So I don't consider a failure. I consider this was not the time.
I definitely learned something.
I don't think of them as failures, but boy, do I get frustrated. There's only 2 costumes in my life that have made me cry, and one of them was an anime idol, and the second one was that Queen Amidala, and it was the sleeves. When that happens, sometimes I walk away for a day or 2. You just walk away, put it down, you've been looking at it too long, and when you come back to it with rest and fresh eyes, that really does a lot, and it helps. So that's kind of my trick. And even if it does set you back, I mean, I didn't bring her, so
Yeah.
it's not worth killing yourself over.
Yeah, because I've had like last minute, the night before, and I failed, and I had to start all over again. And this, okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everybody. That's all the time we have.